Hello, and welcome to another episode of Galactalloy. I'm Alex.
I'm Tyler.
And what are we talking about today, Tyler?
Today we're talking about Bloodborne.
Bloodborne.
Yes.
Bloodborne. Awesome. Let me pull my notes out here
Yeah.
so I can...
Now you would think, based off the first episode, Dark Souls 1, you would expect us to go into Dark Souls 2, but we'll explain.
We have a plan.
Yes.
Things will happen. So we played Bloodborne next. And right off the bat, I wanted to mention something that jumped out at me is that the character creator is still ugly AF.
Yeah,
it's a little better being on PlayStation 4, and the graphics are a little enhanced and stuff, but your characters still look god awful. So I had some fun with it this time, and I created like this all red devil looking dude.
Oh, nice. I still went pretty basic. Male character, bald head, mutton chops,
Yeah.
red eyes with the steampunk glasses, just pale. I don't want to make them like shiny like the moon.
Yeah.
But
Well, this is another one that we've played 4 or 5 times. I think
least.
at least my 5th playthrough on this one.
I think third character, 4th or 5th playthrough at least.
Yeah. What
So what was your starting class,
um,
if you can even remember?
the one that had the highest strength in Arcane. I don't remember what the name of it was.
Yeah.
But I wanted to play with the boom hammer because I never really played with that too much.
Yeah.
So I had done, like the axes and the great sword. What is it? Ludwig's Holy Blade.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And I've done a blood build using the Chicago, and that was awesome.
I bet. The blood tinge builds are hard to work your way up to because you got to be pretty far. First playthrough, like it's like got to be really hard to do. But
You have to get a while, like to get your stats up to where you start doing a lot of damage with it. If I remember correctly, with the Chicago. With the other one, it was a little more basic because it's works off strength and arcane, but it's more strength than arcane, if I remember correctly from what I looked up. So like just going straight strength in the beginning and using the axe until I got into the DLC where I could even pick up the boom hammer
Right.
was like, it was pretty simple on how it was to get to that point.
yeah,
But
I mean the path you had to take, like you had to pretty much run past a lot of really powerful enemies.
But it wasn't too bad because to get to the boom hammer, it's inside of like the second little house.
Yeah.
Well, not second house, but
Where
you
the
go
guy
past
explodes.
the church. Yeah.
Yeah.
And basically you just pick it up and then the dude explodes. And then
I got blown up because I forgot that he explodes. I was like, wait, what's this ticking? And all of a sudden, oh yeah.
My first playthrough, Bloodborne again, where this happened to me.
Well, if you recall, last time we played, I've only played the DLC once, and last time we
Oh,
played,
yeah.
we played together. So this was like my actual.
we just kind of
first
ran
time.
through it together, so
Yeah.
you were more exploring it.
This is my first time running through the DLC solo, which actually reminds me some of the bosses and some of the areas. Like most of the time we did them together. So
Yeah.
I was kind of, even though it was my 4th or 5th playthrough, some of the things I was experiencing for the first time by myself, playing in offline mode. Again, offline mode to avoid PvP encounters.
I want to touch on that real quick.
Yeah.
So in case anyone wonders when they go back or they scream at us about not talking about PvP for a lot, I don't really enjoy the PvP that much in the Soulsborne. I know people hate when you say that.
Yeah.
But the Bloodborne and the Dark Souls games
From
and stuff.
Software games.
Yeah, I'm not really cool with it. I've done it a few times. It's okay. And if you love it, I get it. And I get the whole point of why there are the phantoms invading your world and stuff like that. But for those who are like, that's an integral part of the experience, I disagree. I think that if you enjoy it and you want that as a part, that's fine.
Yeah.
But that's why the later games, which I very much appreciate, is the network option to just turn it off.
Yeah,
Because
it's a good option to have.
Yeah, because I don't like when, I've been farming souls for a while or blood echoes or whatever, and then suddenly some, I wanted to use an old internet reference, but I can't. S-bucket person who, does nothing but live and breathe Bloodborne comes on, just comes out and stomps me.
Well, because it's one of those things that typically they try to balance the invasions based on either your level, your weapon level, something that can try to add balance. But
Which I appreciate them giving it a shot.
It's still a broken system because at least I think it was in the original Dark Souls. You could invade somebody like by wielding a level 1 weapon and then equip
But
your
still
level
being
15.
level 500 or
Yeah.
whatever. Or
Well,
the vice versa or whatever
you could be a higher soul level, you equip the weapon, you invade, then you equip your more powerful weapon,
Yeah.
and then you can just go in and stomp somebody. And that's another thing, like with those games, they are pretty fairly balanced that if you're overpowered, if you're not as good as the person you're fighting, they'll still win even if they're weaker than you. But it's just
It's just another layer of frustration
Yeah,
that I
it's-
don't really want
on
to
a,
have.
yeah, on an already very frustrating series, just to add that little bit of additional like stress, it's just taking away that element.
Yeah.
Especially if you're just trying to play the game for the story or to get through the campaign, whatever you want to call it. Like it's nice to have that option.
Yeah. So like
Yeah.
if you enjoy it and you love it, great.
Yeah.
Cool. But me, I would rather just play without it.
Yeah.
And that's one thing I really wish they would add more options, because we didn't really talk about this in the other one either, because we're playing these separately. But when you talk about the co-op, the way that the co-op works in any of these games is terrible. And I don't see a lot of people talk about that, because okay, it does work.
Yeah.
And yes, you can find each other, and it got a little better in the later games like Bloodborne, Dark Souls 3, where you had the password system. I don't remember if
Yeah.
that's in 2 or not.
I don't
Maybe in
think
Scholar,
so.
the First Sin edition.
Maybe.
But having
we'll
the
find a way to
password,
play. Yeah.
having the password system makes it easier to find your friends that you want to play with, and going into other people's worlds and being able to help them with the covenant. Some of that's really cool.
Yeah.
But the whole idea of like just not being able to select co-op mode and it's loading into it.
Yeah.
And you have to do
'Cause
the bell.
It
and-
takes forever to find your individual, like especially in Dark Souls 1, if you're not playing on the remastered, like you
Yeah.
have to hope that you can, like, the servers meet each other, and then you have to wait forever, and you have to have the humanity, you have to have the insight for Bloodborne, you have
Yeah.
to have all these things. Like there's so many steps, and okay, yes, we get it. It's part of the experience because it's like that's the world it's built. That's why you have to have these certain things. But even just summoning NPCs for boss battles, it's like if you're stuck on a boss battle for a long time, which I got stuck on another boss, two or three bosses in particular. But if you run out of insight, then good luck. You either have to go take time away, go farm insight, and then bring it back to some of the NPCs who are your co-op companions, or you just try to find it on your own. And yeah, the bosses scale based on who you have in your world, but it's one of those things where it's like, why can't I just bring you into my world?
Well, and it's one of those where people talk about the risk reward, and it's designed certain ways. So like you say, you have to have insight or you have to have humanity. Yes, you can get more of those things, but it's like, okay, you're spending an insight to be able to bring somebody into the world to maybe quote unquote assist you with a boss, but the bosses get harder when you have more people in your world.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really make it easier. I mean, you could argue like if one person's keeping his attention, the other person's able to hit it,
Yeah.
kind of like, tanking kind of thing. Okay, yeah, a little bit, but it's one of those where it's like it's so many layers upon layers of like, oh, but this is like, if you like it, that's fine.
Yeah.
You're allowed to like it. But when you're talking about just as a functional, easy to play, easy to jump in with friends, it is not.
Yeah, it's easy to squander it. You can waste the opportunity so quickly because you either will die very quickly from the boss, or the NPCs in particular are dumb.
Yeah,
they're so dumb.
And like if your helper comes in and dies, then now you're left with a harder boss to try to kill on your own.
Yeah, and I'm assuming, I had never really looked into it, but I'm assuming the NPCs scale off of your level as well. So like if you're higher level, then there'll be more of help. But
I have
even
no
then,
idea about that.
Yeah, even then, it's like if it's a multi-phase boss, if they happen to survive to the second phase, they're gonna get crushed instantly because they don't avoid AOE's. They don't. That's just like
in Bloodborne in particular. What anytime I would use an AI helper to help with a boss or whatever, it was like I let them get a little bit of the attention of the boss, and I wail on it as hard as I can until that dude inevitably dies.
Yeah, pretty much.
So.
I was gonna mention. So my class build, I went as I made the game difficult on myself again, like with my Dark Souls 1 playthrough. I went as Waste of Skin, so you're like lowest blood level, I guess you call it. Like your stats are just awful. And then I started with the Saw Cleaver to work my way up to the Stake Driver. and then eventually went from Stake Driver to switching between Stake Driver and the Amygdala arm. Which getting the Amygdala arm from the DLC, there you can't blast past everything. You have to strategically plan out your route, and even then, like once you get there, you have the mini Bloodstar Beast enemy. You have
there's the chain
hunter.
gun guy down
Yeah,
there.
it's just like oh man, well.
Well, let's take a step back
Yeah.
maybe a little bit and just talk about how. So if you allow me to just gush for a moment, I love Bloodborne, and
I can tell.
So I don't
as negative as we have been so far.
Well, and here's a big thing with the idea, and what we kind of try to portray with this is that like there is a difference between your opinion and what you like and what is good. So I don't think Bloodborne is necessarily the best of the series, because there are other things that the other games do better or worse or things like that. But for me, my personal favorite is Bloodborne.
Yeah.
Like the Victorian horror gothic aesthetic thing. I love it more than anything. And like with Final Fantasy 14 coming out and the Reaper and the outfit, I cannot wait to be a scythe-wielding, Bloodborne-looking hunter dude in 14. Like, I want it so bad. So for me, it's just my personal favorite of all the other
everything,
ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Lovecraftian horror.
Well, and I like
the gameplay.
The gameplay, yeah. It's I very much enjoy the more aggressive style a lot more than like the older Dark Souls and stuff like that. All those are good and fun. I like playing them, but me, I even within those games, like we talked about in the last one, like I don't use shields.
Yeah.
Like just throw the shield in the garbage. And Bloodborne says that. Throw the shield away and just get up in the face of stuff. And that's one thing that I really noticed. So like in this one, I think this one may have one of the harder openings, if not the hardest opening to any of the Souls kind of games. I haven't played Sekiro, so that to there. But even like Dark Souls 2, which is quote unquote like the cheapest, or the difficulty is not the same as the other ones. Yeah. Like that first little area, I mean, there's almost no enemies, and like even that big giant one-eyed troll dude, whatever. Yeah. Like he's really not that hard to kill. I mean, he's really tanky.
Yeah.
But like actually fighting him is. Yeah, but I mean, like he's super slow. He's kind of dumb. Fighting him's not that bad. Whereas like Bloodborne opens up, and not even just the werewolf. Like getting past him in that first little area, there's all those dudes. You can get swarmed so fast.
Yeah, that's actually, it's funny you say that because it's I had not necessarily the opposite experience. I found that the beginning, since I took it a little bit slower. I used the pebbles a lot more. Like I baited enemies. I kind of, instead of just rushing in, I was trying to be patient but aggressive at the same time. I had way I thought the difficulty towards the end ramped up way harder than like Dark Souls Remastered.
Yeah, near the end, that's a whole different discussion. Yeah. But do you find the beginning of Bloodborne actually easier? Or was it just that you used that specific with the pebbles?
So no,
because I would say that having to use that would maybe even make it arguably still harder, because having to really separate and pick off guys.
Yeah, so yes, I agree. The beginning is definitely more challenging, especially for newcomers, people who aren't familiar with the game, the mechanics, because you go once you go to the Central Yharnam, down around to where you find the first Burning Cross, and there's just literally
there's 10 dudes down there.
10 or 12 enemies. Dog fast enemies.
Gunner on top.
Yeah, rifle enemies. And if you don't pay attention, there's some that are sitting down that you're not paying attention to. If you go straight in, that you easily swarm.
Oh yeah, you're done.
Incredibly, it's. And then not even mentioning that, but if you go back down around and
the executioner,
the executioner guy, it's
he's hiding in the corner. Yeah,
it's crazy.
Bloodborne goes 0 to 100 in the beginning.
But I think part of that is in the we talk about design of the game. It's intelligently done that way because it's hey, this isn't Dark Souls.
Yeah,
it sets itself apart right in the beginning, and then it also says, hey, you want to get past this part, you either pick them off one by one or you go in.
Yeah.
You go in because the health recovery system, the rallying system it's so smart. And overall, I think I had more fun with this playthrough, but I definitely, amazingly enough, even though I didn't get stuck at bosses for as long, I was more frustrated
Yeah.
with this playthrough, and we'll get more into
Well,
that.
you brought up the rally. I forgot that's even what the name was. They
Yeah.
call it the regain. But aggressively, you get hit and you go back in. You bring the fight back to them. You counter. And you can get some of your health back.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah,
because
especially
then
certain
if you
weapons
do
can stun really easily, and you
Yeah.
can, like, just punish enemies.
well,
super
and making a
hard.
mistake, I mean, it's still punishing, but you have an opportunity to be able to come back if
Yeah.
if you continue to push and have that aggression.
Yeah.
And that's one thing, like I say, I love just the style
Yeah.
of doing that.
Oh, it's a beautiful game. It's really well, like, crafted. I guess.
And the enemies, even though a lot of them, yes, are familiar, they're designed in such a way where they look so unique
Yeah.
and different. And me personally,
Yeah.
I love the look of everything.
And that's something we mentioned with Dark Souls is the enemy AI in Bloodborne. While they still have patterns,
Some of them can
some
still be
you can
dumb.
still exploit.
Yeah.
They are much smarter.
Well,
And-
they're much more aggressive as
Yeah.
well. So in on their end, I mean, they'll detect you from a little bit farther. Like you can sneak up on enemies, but the
Some of them-
backstab mechanic is different.
Yeah.
You have to
have to
hold the charge
charge.
and knock them over
Yeah.
to be able to visceral attack. It's not just backstabs like in Dark Souls, so you can't just walk around stab dudes in the back all
Right.
day.
And the timing, like if you're fighting an enemy, they're aware of you, and trying to time to get to do a parry is way less forgiving.
Well, and it like you were saying, like with shields, your windows and stuff are different
Yeah.
between the different types of guns, between your single shot little pistols and the blunderbuss. And even some guides will tell you, like, this enemy, you have to use the blunderbuss to stun because it has more pellets, it does more damage, whatever. So it has a lot of different nuances within that in the style. Because I started using the blunderbuss, and I was like, this thing sucks. I wasn't able to visceral like anything.
Yeah.
And then when I got to Canehurst Castle and I got the Evelyn, which is one I was very familiar with from playing with the Chikage, it's like, for me, that suits me and my reaction time, my ability a lot more to be able to do visceral attacks and such.
Yeah, I started with the hunting pistol, and I eventually got up to the Ludwig's rifle, which is kind of like more of a long-range blunderbuss. And I noticed a little bit more of a difference when it came to the timing of the parrying. I think I never went back to the hunting pistol, so I can't say for sure that I prefer the Ludwig's rifle, because I also picked up the flame sprayer and tried that out a little bit, which is good against certain enemies.
Yeah,
but
fire hurts beasts a lot.
But it hurts beasts a lot, but then there's a lot of things that just don't take a lot of damage from fire. So you just end up wasting Quicksilver bullets because you're like, oh, just switch back to your regular weapon.
Well, and there's a lot. So that was one thing that I put in here was that the gameplay. At first, I was like, oh, it's kind of simpler, but it's not simpler than Dark Souls. It's more focused.
Yeah.
So Dark Souls has a very wide array of weapons, especially I think Dark Souls 3 maybe has the most. I don't remember.
So many.
But they have so many weapons and so many play styles that you can do within those. And yes, there is variation, obviously, in Bloodborne because there's a bunch of different weapons, but it's only like a quarter of the amount of weapons.
Yeah, and the weapon types aren't as varied.
Yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say that. The weapons,
you have
individual weapons are more unique.
Well, like with the greatsword, Dark Souls has like 4 or 5 different great swords.
Like classes of great
Yeah,
swords.
or with ultra great swords and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And each one reacts a little bit differently. Whereas Bloodborne has like 2.
Yeah.
And yes, they play differently, but there aren't as many variations on the same type of weapon.
Right.
But then you also have the trick weapon system where you can swap forms of the weapons, which is
really cool.
Really cool, and it allows you to more readily go from like with the axe, does in the extended mode, does big sweeping moves. You can hit a
Crowd
bunch of dudes at
control.
once, whereas for bosses you can swap it back to the one-handed and do little quicker, more focused strikes.
Right, which I noticed a big difference where like the difference between blunt attacks and thrust attacks and the elemental attacks like actually matters, it seems. Like in Dark Souls, it's like you can pick one and it's going to be, if you have it leveled up enough, it's going to be good either way. If you're fighting a particular enemy and finding that you're not doing a whole lot of damage, the trick mode might do more because it's just a different damage type.
Yeah.
That really it makes a difference depending on what enemy you're fighting, it seems.
And that's one thing with the Boomhammer. After using it, I ultimately concluded that I don't really like the boom hammer. Like it had fun points, and I liked being able to set it on fire and do that extra fire damage. And like, it's not that its moves weren't bad. And I was reading that some people really enjoy it for PvP and such.
Yeah.
But to me, it fell in this area of it swings slower than most one-handed weapons because it doesn't have a two-handed mode. The trick mode is just pulling
sets it on fire or
pulls the hammer back, so when your next swing does like a fiery explosion thing, which has a little bit more like knockback and stuff to it. So it does have variation whether you have it on or not. But it, like I say, it swings a little slower than most one-handed weapons, but it doesn't really hit as hard as the two-handed weapons.
Yeah.
So it's in this kind of in-between area that actually for most bosses I ended up leveling up the Tonitrus. And for a lot of them, the little electric
like the
mace
hammer
kind of thing, yeah.
Yeah.
And I used that to fight a lot of the bosses.
Oh, really?
Because it swings a lot quicker,
Yeah.
and like on kin bosses, like Abritus and Rom and stuff, like it just decimates, like absolutely destroys a bunch of different bosses like that.
Gotcha.
The electricity, and like I say, so between it hitting harder with the lightning, and between it swinging a lot faster, and I could dodge a lot more effectively and such, than using the boom hammer. Like I said, a lot of times for bosses, I just had to switch away from the boom hammer. Whereas the boom hammer was a lot better for like crowds of dudes, because if you did it right, you can smash in the middle of them and it would explode and knock a bunch of them over and stuff. So like they both had their advantages, but ultimately I was just like, man, the boom hammer to me just wasn't as cool as I was hoping it was going to be. But
that's kind of how I felt when when I finally got the amygdala arm and leveled it up. I already had like a level 9 or 10
Stake driver?
Stake driver. Couldn't remember what it was called for a second there. But it wasn't as good against bosses because its main mode is like a slam because it's like a big club, and its trick attack mode is more like a crowd control sweep with the weird like tentacle arm. And so it was, by that time I'd gotten it, I was more familiar with fighting bosses with the stake driver because its main mode is a slash and its trick mode is a stab. And then like its heavy attack is a giant like explosion stab, which takes a long time to charge. And it was just easier to fight bosses because it was faster, I think was the biggest thing, because you could go and get a couple hits. It did more damage overall. You could recover your health faster, whereas like single hits with the amygdala arm against bosses didn't do as much damage as the single hits with my stake driver.
Yeah.
So it just wasn't worth it because I could just get way more hits in.
Well, and that might have changed a little bit if you had leveled up certain stats a little more, or if you were higher level and stuff.
I kind of messed up with my stats. It made a difference for the amygdala arm once I finally got it, but so I didn't try to go too wide a spectrum, but I ended up doing too wide a spectrum. I focused mainly in on strength because that's what those two weapons are mainly based on. I did a little bit into skill, and then I put more into arcane than I probably should have.
Yeah.
By the end of the game, I realized I probably should have put more into health and stamina than I had put into arcane. But at that point, it was like, I'm not going to sit here and grind to get all my stats up to snuff. I'm just going to do what I can with what I have, and just took a lot more patience than I was ready to give it. But yeah.
But like me, with both boom hammer and the Tonitrus, it's mainly strength and arcane. So I did strength first, and then I did arcane second. So it was, they weren't too far off. Like the boom hammer ultimately hit harder per hit, but the Tonitrus, like I said, was a little bit faster.
And you didn't need to do any skill?
I did do skill a little bit later. Like once I had both arcane and strength at 50, then I started putting skill in, because then it would add to the overall
right, because you get
damage.
The soft cap.
Yeah. So that's when I try to do. And I did a little bit of blood tinge to be able to use the Evelyn and stuff like that. I
kind of wish I had focused more on getting one skill to the soft cap than on what I did. I think the highest stat I got was 40 in strength.
Yeah.
And it helped, but yeah, it just, like I said, yeah.
Well, one thing to talk about the battle system a little bit more was something that I noticed that I didn't really notice before was in the Gascoigne fight. When you fight him, and initially his arena seems like it's very frustrating. Like I was getting really annoyed with all the gravestones everywhere because you don't really have a lot of room to dodge. And yes, it is designed to limit your dodging and stuff, but I also realized like part of this boss battle and what it's trying to tell you is to get aggressive.
Yeah, close.
The more you try to back away, the more difficult it's going to be for you.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get in and you learn the moves and the right when to dodge, of course, you got to learn the dodging and unblocking and stuff in Dark Souls, but this one is like, get up in that dude's face
Yeah.
and, get your hits in, rock them, and,
Right, because the dodging is faster, but the iframes are less forgiving, it
Yeah,
seems.
yeah.
Because, and that's a big problem I had with the stake driver, is that I would dodge to avoid, but then the direction my character was facing, I'd go to attack, and he'd just be whiffing. Like okay, what am I just supposed to take a second longer? I don't know if I was having controller difficulties or what.
Well, some of the stuff is a little wonky. I was having a real hard time with hitting some of the enemies with the gun. So, especially if there's a little bit of elevation, like if you're on stairs and things like that, like during the Ligarius fight, I would be what I think would be the right distance and stuff to shoot him with my gun, and I would shoot straight through his body.
Oh, wow.
Or, I would be aimed at him, and it would just shoot off into the sky, into the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And so there is a little bit of wonkiness when it comes to that stuff. It's not totally perfect with
Right.
it.
So did you mainly go standard path, or did you branch off at all?
I pretty much went. So I went straight to Vicar Amelia, so I could get to the DLC, so I can get the Boomhammer to play as
Gotcha.
much of the game
Did
with
you
the Boomhammer
skip
as
the
possible.
Cleric Beast, or did you?
No, I killed the Cleric Beast.
Okay.
So I went ahead and killed the Cleric Beast,
Gotcha.
and then I went straight through Amelia and the Cleric Beast was mainly just to get some blood echoes to level up and stuff
Right.
a little
So
bit,
you
because
didn't-
Cleric Beast is super easy.
You didn't go to Old Yarnum or the.
I went after.
Hemwick
Once I got
thing?
the boom hammer, I went down. I killed the Bloodstar Beast.
Gotcha.
And that was one of the things that I wanted to talk about next. With that is so I really really like in keeping with the rewarding exploration and taking a different path.
Mm-hmm.
So there's so much locked behind the Bloodstar Beast that you might not
Yeah.
even know is in the game if you don't kill him, because you unlock the Chalice dungeons. You can go to the
Healing Church.
Hypogean Gale
Yeah.
or whatever earlier. There's something else that it unlocks.
Because it's
Killing the Bloodstar
You go
Beast.
to the healing church
Upper Cathedral
workshop.
ward, where you can drop down.
Yeah.
You have to kill the Bloodstar Beast to be able to go into that,
Mm-hmm.
which means later in the game, when you unlock Upper Cathedral ward, you could only go there. I don't know if the door opens later. I don't
know.
remember. But,
Either way,
yeah, I don't remember if you can just go there earlier or if it's not unlocked at all.
it makes a big difference because
But
it gives you the access to the abandoned workshop as well, which
Yeah.
is integral to getting to the secret, quote unquote, secret ending of the game.
Yeah, to be able to get the umbilical cord. Well, and an easier umbilical cord, because the other ones, some of them are the Asefka's Clinic
Yeah.
or the one from what's her face with the alien baby.
Yeah.
You could miss those.
Yeah.
pretty easily if you didn't know they were there.
But that makes me think that I feel like the side quests and the NPCs requests are a little bit more straightforward. Obviously, if it's your first time playing through and if you're not familiar with checking every window and looking at the lamps, but they kind of tell you what you need to do. In a sense.
They're a little bit more descriptive in what their goals are, but there's also a little bit more. So in Dark Souls, it's once you get to this boss, if you have talked to this person and do that, and it is similar in Bloodborne, but there's a pretty clear cut, dusk versus night after Amelia, versus Blood Moon after Rom. There are some pretty hard lines that separate the things, and it's just, I would say, a little bit easier or going back to more focused on how things are separated and how progression happens.
Yes. Well, and it promotes that exploration, like you mentioned, because so many things, if you defeat Vicar Amelia early, it kind of locks you out from certain NPC quest lines and certain things you can do, because you can skip Amelia and you can go straight to Hemlock Lane?
Charnel Lane.
Yeah, and you can unlock the Carol runes. You can go down into Old Yarnum and you can defeat the Bloodstar Beast. From the Bloodstar Beast, you can go up to the Healing Church workshop and go to the Hypergean Gale, and then you can go defeat Dark Beast Parl, and you can go up and you can go talk to the NPC, make him friendly. Can't remember his name right now. That's how you get the stake driver. If you don't want to fight your way through Old Yarn and defeat him. But it's like there's so much you can do before that even transition point.
Yeah, which I have a little annoyance with that specific quest, by the way, because you have his buddy that's downstairs. I guess that they're supposed to both be a part of that same, protecting the beast because they used to be people or whatever. That dude attacks you regardless.
Yeah,
so it's like I walked through there. Yes, you can still run past him and explore, but it was a little annoying to befriend the dude and then walk down there and that guy attacked me. Then I fight him back, and then the dude upstairs doesn't like me anymore. And it's like your buddy brought it to me, man. Like this.
Yeah, I kind of messed up in that point because I did the work to get past Dark Beast Parl to go talk to him to get the badge to buy the stake driver, and then I killed him anyway.
Yeah.
So it's like I should have just went straight through Old Yarnum.
I mean, ultimately the NPCs, unless you're trying to do their quests, they don't really matter in the grand scheme of things.
Right.
Depending on, unless you're trying to do, role play, if you're trying to feel, if you feel bad for certain characters and stuff like that. So I mean.
Well, and that's again making the game more difficult on myself than I needed to. I intentionally saved up resources and kept myself kind of under-leveled until I got specific weapons. Because like getting through Dark Beast Parl, I think I only had like a +2 Saw Cleaver. And in order to make sure I had enough materials to level the stake driver as early as I could, because that's what I wanted to do. And yeah, I didn't struggle too hard with Dark Beast. I took a few attempts, but it was some of the later bosses that are just like. Oh.
Well, there's a lot of things in the system, the way that the game works, that I prefer. So like, I like the blood vials versus Estus. Instead of having like a set, you only have so many of these. Whereas you can farm blood vials. So like, let's say if you are on your road to something else, you have that opportunity where if you're still taking out enemies and you're low on blood vials, you can recoup them a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, later in the game that kind of becomes inconsequential because you can just get a bunch of blood echoes and buy a billion of them.
Yeah, unless you have gotten stuck on a boss and you're at the point where you have to literally stop fighting the boss to go farm blood vials because you're running low.
That was my first playthrough. I had like 0 blood vials, and I was like, I need to go get a bunch more of these.
I agree with you up until that point where it's like there were certain times where I wish I had a set limit because you could get back to the bosses so much faster that taking the time away to either go farm blood echoes or the blood vials themselves to make sure you had enough resources to fight a boss is just like, just give me my Estus. Like I'll be more careful with healing if I know that I can only have this
finite.
Yeah. Which is, it's finite either way, but it's like, now it's like, it's this expendable resource that doesn't come back. It's like, I know I'm trying to be careful with it. But something we didn't mention in the last episode, I know you wanted to touch on, I think you know what I'm alluding to, but the soundtrack.
Oh, yeah. I had that in my notes to talk about here. I said that Muzak, though. So that's another one. So like for me personally, my favorite soundtrack is the Bloodborne one. Yeah. I just really love the huge orchestric, especially like there's a reason why Ludwig's theme stands out and why so many people like it so much and stuff. So for me, it was just much more of the loud, the chants, and all that kind of stuff. Like
it evolves over time with the phases. And it rises higher and higher as you get closer and closer.
Yeah. So for me, like the soundtrack is integral.
Yeah.
To the feel of Bloodborne.
Right. Which the music in Dark Souls original is really good. We didn't mention it. It's really good, and we forgot to talk about it. But like the whole From Software games, like they have amazing music, sound effects, and sound
They
design.
do a great job.
Yeah.
I mean, they're composers and such. I wish I know their names. But yeah, they do. It's awesome.
And I think one of the reasons why we missed touching on it last time is that it's all a part of the ambiance of the game, where it's like it's there, you notice it, but it's not something that's like you're still so focused on what you're doing that it adds to the world, adds to the boss battle, but you're not specifically listening to the music.
Yeah, like for me, so primarily there is no music in most of the game. It's mainly on bosses.
Right.
So most of the time, at least in my earlier playthroughs, I didn't really have a chance to appreciate the music because I was so amped up and anxiety fueled.
Focused.
Yeah. And trying to fight, then survive the boss and trying to learn it that I didn't really, and it wasn't really until I had played it for a while and listened to soundtracks online until I really started to grow an appreciation for the music in it.
Yeah.
With the exception in Dark Souls, I would say, with Gwen's theme. And because it's just like
it's instantly iconic.
Like so many of the bosses is all, and then his, you come in, it's just ding, ding,
that
ding,
piano.
and you're like, whoa, this is a totally different mood.
Yeah.
Like it's so much more somber and quiet.
Because it makes you instantly know that you're at the final boss.
Yeah.
Like the lead up to him. We'll get back to Bloodborne
in a different way.
Yeah.
It's not the huge, like the final boss has the biggest sound.
Yeah. It's sad in a way because if it's your first playthrough, you may not realize it, but you're about to have to make this like decision. It's a huge decision in the context of the lore of the game, and it's like defeating like he's not even really like your enemy.
Yeah.
He's just an obstacle in the way, and defeating him is sad in a way because he's just lost to this world, and it's
well,
so...
and a big thing is depending on who you talk to lore wise, whether you choose the quote good or bad ending, you're still kind of the bad guy.
Yeah.
Or you could be seen as the bad guy in either situation. So it's really bittersweet to get to the end. Whereas in Bloodborne, the music, it has, it very much fits the mood, and it has some of those. Yeah. But it's just, it's so good overall. Like every track is awesome to hear, and it makes all the battles, like you're being super aggressive and fighting these crazy things.
I'll say the soundtrack better be good with the amount of times you're going to hear them over and over again.
Yeah, if you tied to the same boss over and over again, that's for sure. Well,
so you, after Vicar Amelia, then you went to the DLC first, straight to the
So
Boon
I
Hammer.
just grabbed the Boon Hammer, and then I went through the rest of the game like you normally would.
So you didn't read it. You didn't revisit the DLC till what? Till you got to like.
So I was on the Gurman when I went back and cleared the DLC.
Gotcha. So I'm trying to remember exactly what my path was because I went to Cleric Beast, Gascoigne, then to the Witch of Hemlock Lane, and then I went down to Old Yarnum to defeat Bloodstarve, to the Hypergean. Oh, sorry. Then Dark Beast got my stake driver. I said all the while only having a +2 weapon. Like I did all of that using NPC help when it was available. And then I think I did all the NPC quests. I did a lot more in this game. First of all, I'll say maybe it's because, like I said, I enjoy this game more. I had more fun with it, especially in the beginning. I did a lot more.
Well, and is it just me,
in a sense, to make myself strong enough to get through some of the parts?
Is it just me, or is Bloodborne a little smaller?
I was going to say
some of them.
It's
still
the individual levels themselves.
Yeah, like it still has a good length and gameplay and stuff, but it feels like a lot of the areas.
Well, it's more linear for sure. A lot of the areas and zones are dead ends. They sometimes connect back around, but a lot of times it's like a straight path and they're shorter. And the paths, like I mentioned before, the paths back to the bosses are also shorter because it's trying to promote that quick, aggressive, assertive gameplay in the level design and the shortcuts and everything. So, because you can run through and avoid a lot of enemies. You don't have to fight at like barely anything at all.
Yeah.
You don't even have to fight most of the bosses. There's so much optional. I guess another good point in its favor is there's a lot of optional content. If you don't want to engage with it, you don't have to. But if you do, it's worth your while.
Well, like the Witch, for example, unlocking the Carol runes.
Yeah.
It's one of those you could totally just never go down that pathway, but doing it and having those Carol runes can help immensely with your gameplay because they can, make it where you can carry more blood vials or have more defense or more health or stamina, stuff like that.
Now,
or get more blood echoes.
Can you go to the Canehurst Castle before Vicar Amelia? I can't remember.
No, you have to get to Isefka's clinic.
Okay.
And you have to pick up the Canehurst summons.
You have to go. So then, after I did all that stuff, I did Vicar Amelia finally. Then I went down to the Forbidden Woods. Went to Isefka's clinic. After doing Isefka's clinic, I stopped, actually, and I was like, okay, I'm going to, at this point, go into the DLC, actually, and try to get as far as I could in the DLC. I believe I ended up giving up on that early in the beginning because okay, so if given enough time and patience, you can get through a lot of it. But the hunters are so intimidating and they do so much damage that at a certain point I was like, all right, I need to go back and get stronger. I don't even think I got through the first boss because the first boss
Is Ludwig.
is Ludwig, yeah.
I just remembered. I forgot to kill a boss.
Oh yeah. Oh,
I didn't go back and kill First Vicar. Lawrence.
Lawrence,
Yeah.
the first
I
vicar.
didn't go back and kill him. Dang it.
That's okay.
I've killed him in the past, so.
Yeah, same. But that's why I was gonna save that little for the end, close to the end.
So I went like the normal path.
Yeah.
You know, well, I went and I did, like I said, I got my boom hammer, and then I went and did the witch. And as soon as I could get, because after Amelia, you can go down. My bad. You can go down to the woods, and then I went back to Sefka's clinic from there.
Right.
And I got the summons, and I went to Canehurst.
Yeah.
And after I did Canehurst, I continued through to go to the Shadows and Ron.
Yeah.
And just kind of, the same path.
I
there.
will say that once I did the work to get my stake driver as high as I could, the game became so much easier.
Yeah.
I made it so hard on myself for so long because I got through all of it with NPC help and whatnot, but once I got down in the Forbidden Woods and was leveled up, and I ran through the Shadows of Yharnam. I didn't realize you could summon 2 NPCs for that battle, which made it way easier.
Yeah. Well, there's specific things you have to do for that.
I think you have to be part of a certain covenant.
Yeah.
Confederates, I believe.
To have 2 of the dudes.
Yeah. And then once I got through that, actually, I think I took another pause after the Shadows of Yharnam before going into Bergenworth. I think I went back to the DLC to get, and I got all the way up to, if I'm remembering this correctly, I got all the way up to Ludwig, and then I got stuck on Ludwig for a very long time. Another kind of Ornstein and Smo situation. I used not all of my insight, but most of my insight summoning Henriette and trying to defeat Ludwig. I got to his second phase so many times. I got so close to defeating him so many times, but at a certain point, it's like, okay, I don't want to go and fight him by myself, and so I kind of I gave up, and I needed more resources. So then I went and did, after that point, through Bergenworth into Rom, because I tried to do everything I could in the game that it would allow you to do the game before Rom.
Yeah.
And then after Rom, I think I went straight through into Yahagul. Yahagul. Yeah. And then I got the key to the Upper Cathedral ward, and then I went through. I stopped there.
Yeah. Well, I got 2. Where what is it? The giant guy, the Undying Mass or whatever it's called, or I don't remember what it's called.
God, I can't remember his name right now.
Yeah, I got up to that.
The Reborn. Something.
The One Reborn.
The One Reborn.
Yeah. So I got up to the One Reborn.
Yeah.
The Undying Mass. I'm thinking of a totally different game or something. But yeah, the One Reborn. So I got up to him, and then I went back myself and did Upper Cathedral Ward and cleared that out.
I think I'm trying to remember if I defeated him first and entered Nightmare Mensis before. Oh, I forgot to mention the Nightmare Frontier.
Oh yeah, Nightmare Frontier. I did all
trying to remember exactly when I went in there, and then I got all the way to the amygdala, and I actually stopped. I gave up on fighting the amygdala for a while before I got stronger, because I wasn't doing a lot of damage to him. So I got all the way up to him, and then I left for a while, did some more of the main game, and then came back and defeated the amygdala.
Yeah.
But then,
which is funny, because I did a little Blood Echo grinding, but for the most part, I was breezing through a lot of these. Like the amygdala, I beat the crap out of.
Yeah.
Must
have been the boom hammer or something.
No, well, so the boom hammer kind of sucked against most bosses.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them it did all right. If I really had the opportunity to charge it and do the R2 smash, it did pretty decent. But for the most part, bosses, I used the Tonitrus on everything.
Oh, right.
Dude, the Tonitrus just rips bosses up. It attacks so quick, and having the lightning on it helps a bunch. Even ones that weren't weak against lightning necessarily helped so much with them.
Yeah.
The amygdala I did fight with the boom hammer. But then I started having trouble with some of the bosses in the boom hammer, and then I just Tonitrused it up, man. I just like with Rom, I didn't even kill a single spider.
Oh,
I just would wail on Rom, and then when she spawned the next thing, I ran up, and each time I got her pretty much a third dead when she would summon her next round of spiders and just run to her and one big old combo and got her like a third and took her out in like 3, I think it maybe been 3 or maybe 4 rounds or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, the Tonitrus just like dude,
That's awesome.
it beat stuff up so hard.
Yeah, well, the stake driver was really powerful too, but it was kind of like when I was using the Cesti in Dark Souls, where it required a lot more hits.
Yeah.
Like, it was so fast and it did a lot of damage, but it required a lot more, like, dodging in and out, getting your health back, and kind of just, like, really punishing and trying to... If you did... Most bosses, if you did, like, 3 or 4 hits in a row, you would get, like, a hit stun. So as long as you stayed in and had enough stamina, that's another reason why I wish I had put more into stamina, because I just needed to get more.
Well, and it's finding a balance with that. Like when I found that I was doing enough damage, but it was taking me, I was running out of hits and dodging ability. I would put a little bit more into stamina and balance it back out a little bit. And,
yeah, I had no idea you did the Tonitrus. That's cool.
well, my plan was to like use the 2 of them because they both work off of Strength and Arcane.
Right.
And then yeah, man, like the Tonitrus, like say, it's okay for regular enemies. The Boomhammer took them out pretty easily. Like it killed a lot of things in one hit.
Right.
But the Tonitrus, dude, that thing's awesome. Like the one Reborn, I went and killed all the witches, and I went down. It was like 2 rounds of just combos on him.
Yeah,
And
he's
dead.
so easy.
I know, but with the Tonitrus, it was like even easier.
Wow.
And even a Breatus, which is like one of the harder. Well, it has more health than a lot of other bosses. And if you get caught by, what is that, a Call Beyond or whatever it does?
The grab.
Well, not just the grab, but the big arcane explosion and
right.
stuff, like the laser beams can take you out pretty quick.
Yeah.
And I did use the NPC for her, but man, like I just got behind her 2 little butt tentacles and just went to town and just knocked her out in no time.
Yeah, well, that's because Breedus didn't give me too much trouble. It took me a couple rounds. Most bosses, like I did Bloodstarved Beast in 2 rounds, 2 attempts, which that one's usually a pretty big struggle for a lot of people.
Well, yeah, it's considered one of the hardest or not hardest, but one of the harder, because it has the poison, and then it gets the poison aura around it, so you're getting poisoned by standing by it to hit it. So it took me 2 tries as well. Yeah. But the one I'll blame on my kid, in that I was trying to fight, and she ran up and grabbed my leg and wanted to play right at that moment, and it distracted me, and I got whacked.
Yeah.
But even the Bloodstar Beast, I didn't really have too much trouble with.
Right. Yeah, most bosses didn't took no more than a handful of 2 or 3 attempts. It wasn't really until I got to Ludwig where it's just like...
So that's what I was... So getting through the main game, like it is hard. Mm-hmm. Like I actually would say that Bloodborne, for the most part, is harder than a lot of parts of Dark Souls 1.
Oh, definitely.
Dark Souls 1 has some parts that are harder, but and some of the bosses, arguably with some of them are just super easy, but so many of them in Bloodborne are so more overwhelming.
Yeah.
Because like the aggression. Because in Dark Souls, they seem huge and intimidating.
Yeah.
Until you back up and realize that big dragon is stupid.
Yeah, you could just dodge or guard out of the way.
Yeah, and so with Bloodborne is they press the advantage so much more.
You can't leave
so
them alone because
yeah,
they
you
won't leave
can't
you alone.
just
They
wait.
never leave you alone.
Yeah, you have to be moving the whole time.
Even the bigger bosses, like the dumber
they're
ones,
fast for the most part. Especially like when you get into the root chalices and stuff, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But yeah, man, like I say the witches. So if you have any insight at all, they spawn the little crazy hook things.
Yeah.
And those guys aren't necessarily super hard, but when you have like 2-3 of them spawned in, you're like, oh man, like there are so many things in here.
Yeah.
It gets a little overwhelming. Rom, not super, super hard, but when there's 30 spiders on the ground, it's like, holy crap, what is going on?
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, fun fact about that area is those guy with the hook weapons won't spawn if you go there before Vicar Amelia. They'll only spawn in the witch's arena.
Oh, okay. I thought it was just if you fight her with no insight, they don't spawn either.
Yeah, they're not even there.
So they won't go at night.
Yeah,
or if it's dusk or whatever. Okay, so I probably should have killed her first.
Yeah, it makes it going through there way easier, just because those guys aren't super hard, but they are really annoying.
Well, the first big roadblock I had was in Canehurst, because like Canehurst is a secret area, and the secret areas are typically a little bit harder.
Yeah.
Canehurst is so dang hard.
Yes.
Like those big blood-sucking mosquito
Those
things.
are the worst enemies in the game.
Dude,
in my opinion, they're the
like
worst.
barely stun. I mean, you can stun them, yes, but it's like they get back up really fast.
They do a ton
They
of
come at you.
damage.
They do a ton of damage. Yeah, and it's like those things are hard.
Yeah.
And there's like 1,000 of them just to get in the castle, and running by them.
it's
You can
hard.
do it, but it's still difficult.
Yeah, I was going to specifically mention those guys when I went to Canehurst. I felt fairly powerful, but those guys, they're the worst enemies.
They
in the game.
tear you up,
Yeah.
man. Like even just running down to the bottom where all those worms are. Like if you try to run in and grab that item, run back out. If you're not so specific, those worms will overwhelm the crap out of
Yeah.
you. Yeah, those things are hard. But then when you get inside, you have the ghosts. And they're pretty easy. You know,
Yeah.
they take a couple hits, but they move slow. And if you're paying attention, the gargoyles again, they're an example. They're more like a Dark Souls enemy. They're
Yeah.
dumb. Like you can walk right behind them and
Yeah.
butt stab
They're kind
them
of
and
annoying.
stuff. Yeah, they're not. The hardest part is where they're at.
Yeah.
Like with the walkways, the bridges that have like no railings and stuff, and they'll blow you off with their little scream, things like that.
That's why I made sure I clicked the right stick so much to make sure that I could like target enemies, throw pebbles at them, to bait them. I'm like, no.
Yeah, because
Well-
they like to stand like gargoyles, and you
Yeah.
think that there might not even be an enemy there. Or they hide.
Which, quick side note, meant to specifically mention because we've talked about so many things, but one of the big points that we brought up in the last video was, for me in particular, changing the controls of the game.
So I was really annoyed that
get
I
back to
could
Canehurst
not
in a second,
adjust. I was really annoyed I could not change the controls on
Yeah.
Bloodborne. And I hope, because there's this continuing rumor that with the development of Bloodborne 2 and
Release on
Bloodborne
PC.
for PS5 is that there's a PC port coming.
Yeah.
And man, I want to play that on PC because I want to change my controls.
It was weird because I, for the most part, didn't have a problem. My brain didn't get too confused with going from the controls I had set up for Dark
The
Souls
first
1.
hour or so was a little cumbersome for me.
There were a few instances where I would go to attack and I'd heal because
Yeah.
I was used to pressing triangle.
Okay, and so they had to figure out, because there was more items, because you could do the blood bullet thing, and you had the different items, because items are used a little bit differently in
Yeah.
Dark Souls versus... So they had to, figure out how to add more things and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like I get that it would be different, but it's like, please just let me change them.
I can't say for certain because you can't change the controls, but I think I would have preferred keeping Bloodborne the controls that they are
Yeah.
currently, just because of like the experience I have with it. Once I finally retrained my brain to be like, no, this is what you got to do to keep it. Because it's like switching to your trick attack mode, using the gun, healing, and how it had the dodging and everything, how it all worked. Just to me, it made more sense.
Well, and see, for me, really the only one I would change is I would switch my dash and dodge back up to one of the shoulder buttons. So my right trigger would be to fire the gun and parry. I'm sorry, not my right, my left trigger, my L2. My L1 would be to dodge and run. And then my R2 and L1 would be the same, would be the attacks. Because I don't really do the weapon switch attack. And I know some of them are very good and some of them can be very powerful, but it's just something in my brain. Like I don't do it very well.
Yeah.
And so it's one that I know me. So just like shield, if I could just remove shield over to the face buttons, like, because I would never use it.
Yeah.
Or if I did use it, it wouldn't be in the heat of battle where I need to be able to move my camera and dodge all at the
Right.
same time. So I was like, if I could just swap those two buttons and maybe the heal buttons, since the other one in the other game it heals versus uses the item. So it's like,
That was the biggest thing that I missed about the control scheme, is being able to dodge, run, and control the camera at the same time.
yeah, like
That was
if I could just swap those two,
Yeah.
it would be like,
I noticed that. I noticed that really bad this time. But so anyway, I digress. Getting back to Canehurst,
Yeah.
I vaguely recall you
Ligarius-
mentioned me that Ligarius
or Ligari, that's how you say it.
was like a challenge.
He was like the first roadblock that I had, because he's one of those, like, I mean, the game is aggressive and stuff, but when you look at his moves and stuff like that, you kind of go, you got to get aggressive. But he's one of those that is one of the first lessons of you can't let up.
Yeah.
Like you have to. Yes, there is time if you run away far enough and you can heal in between. But the big thing with him is like, you got to be able to get in his face and dominate.
And visceral attacks are very
Visceral are
to him.
so helpful. So I had a real problem with the blunderbuss.
Yeah.
I kept missing. Like I would shoot through him, or I would shoot to the moon, and it wouldn't hit him.
Yeah.
So I went and I grinded for souls a little bit to be able to use the Evelyn. And then once I had that, I had the timing down, and I could parry him visceral attack like no problem. And then I took him down. Like as soon as the first try, once I had the Evelyn, I walked up there and beat him.
Right.
And he was still difficult, but it's one of those, like, you really have to press the advantage with him.
Well, especially in his third phase when he summons that
the stupid
arcane
sword.
You can go destroy it, but you for not standing behind cover, it's just constant damage.
Yeah.
Yeah, it took me like 3 attempts, but he's definitely, especially because you can get to him pretty early.
He's one of those where it's like you go through this really hard level and you're like, I got this, like I'm prepared. I'm killing these enemies enough, and then you go to fight him and you're like, oh man, this dude's not playing.
You can't summon NPC help.
Yeah.
It's just it's
whereas like Cleric Beast being the first boss, even though he's an optional boss, it's the first available boss.
Yeah.
You run up to him and he's kind of like a big dumb beast.
Yeah.
You can get behind it real easy, and
you can stagger him pretty easy
swipe.
Too.
Yeah.
I didn't honestly recall that until doing this time.
No.
It's like especially because the saw cleaver does more damage against
it does the saw whatever.
Yeah. So it's just like at a certain point, I think he was like about halfway, like his health bar was halfway. I just kept attacking him and he died. Like,
he's really not hard.
Yeah.
So when you look at a big boss like that, and he seems kind of intimidating, you walk up to Logarius and you're like, I got a feel for the game. I've beaten a few bosses.
Yeah.
I've had to do some stuff, and that guy reminds you, like, nah, man, like we still got some challenge in here.
Yeah, because you usually think of the bigger sized enemies being
he's very tall.
Well, you think of the bigger enemies in Dark Souls as being the threat. Like, the bigger they are, the more of a threat. No, in Bloodborne, the humans,
the hunters, like you started to mention a little bit in the DLC, like the hunters throughout the whole game, like they are all hard
because they're smart. Like I said, we talked about how smart the enemies are. Those hunters,
they will shoot you and parry you.
Yeah, if you didn't know it, you would think you're fighting human players.
Yeah.
Because even some of the bosses,
I don't know if I would say they're that good, but they are definitely a big challenge. From a big difference from going and fighting like the giant dudes who swing the statues versus fighting the hunters, because they're just as fast as you. They dodge just as much as you.
They can parry you. They do trick attacks. There's some bosses that are like them that can parry you as well. Man, it's just...
Well, that's kind of like the one right before Rom.
The Shadows of
Yharnam. That just left my brain for a second. They're not the hardest boss, but I mean they are really quick and really fast.
Yeah,
and they can get really annoying once you start killing them.
With the snakes.
They started bringing the snakes. That was my biggest problem with them when they would summon those snakes, and because they can reach like all the way across the entire map you have to fight them in.
Right, or like they come up from the ground, you just have no idea.
Yeah, with the whistle, Madara's whistle or whatever.
Yeah.
There's 3 of them. So,
especially if you're trying to fight it by yourself.
Yeah.
I was like, no, screw that.
I did it solo. Whatever I did in my playthrough, I didn't have the NPCs available to me.
Gotcha. So all the way up through the Reborn one, or the one Reborn, got to Nightmare Mensis, and at that point for me, that's when I went back to the DLC to try to defeat Ludwig. And I gave him more attempts, and I think at a certain point, did I give up on him again at that point? I'm trying to remember. I think yes. I went back. I defeated him, finally.
Mm-hmm.
I was strong enough to defeat him, and then I was like, cool. I continued with the DLC, if I'm remembering my timeline correctly. I continued through the DLC, and I got through the prison into the research hall into the failed ones.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys, they're not a hard boss, but I actually struggled with them for a minute because if they hit you, they do a lot of damage.
They hit really hard, and if you get all 4 of them together,
yeah,
they can be a little bit to manage.
And I was getting frustrated at that point because I had spent so much time in the DLC. I was like, these guys are easy. I should be getting through them, no problem. And I kept
Well,
dying.
the thing with them is they remind me more of a Bloodborne, or not, I'm sorry, like a Dark Souls boss versus a Bloodborne boss.
Yeah.
Because they look, like when they summon the meteors, like it looks very scary until you realize, if you know what direction it is from, you just put the tree between you and it, and they can't really hit you. Or if you use the shield that it gives you right before, that shield has unusual arcane
The block
defense.
shield, yeah.
So you can use it and you can block those meteors and stuff, and
Yeah,
it does way less.
didn't even realize
Yeah,
that.
like that's like the whole reason for that shield is to
Yeah.
use it for that boss fight. So it's one of those. It's like, because they're not near as fast, they're not near as aggressive and stuff, and they can get to be a little bit to manage when you got 4 of them trying to blast you with arcane and stuff. But it's like one of those where they're just kind of intimidating at first.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Well-
but it's funny that you mentioned Ludwig and stuff, because I have him in my notes here.
Yeah. Sorry, we'll go back.
Ludwig is hard as he's so hard.
Yeah.
I fought him over and over
Really?
again. Yeah, it took me. Well, the biggest problem was like the boom hammer.
Yeah.
Was it just wasn't quite quick enough, and even though it did a little more damage than my Tonitrus, I was having a hard time with managing hitting and dodging and moving out of the way, and it was more of the second phase. Like I can get him to the second phase every time real easy. But he's one of those bosses, like he's a lot smarter than some of the other ones. You can't just get behind him like most big bosses and slap him in the butt.
Yeah,
you know, because
he'll punish you too.
He'll swing his little sword behind him and
Yeah.
hit you and stuff. And even with using the Henriette, as I was able to get him to the second stage with her around.
Yeah.
But most of the time, within like a few seconds of the second stage, she would get taken
Yeah.
out. She lasted a little while sometimes, but yeah, I fought him a bunch of times over and over and
So
over again.
did you struggle more with his first or second phase?
With the second phase?
Really?
Yeah.
See, I was actually, if I could get him to the second phase, I was a lot happier.
Yeah.
I pretty much had the timing down of his sword attacks. If you stayed behind him, like he could swing behind you, but if I
He
could
could do
attack,
a little horse kick.
yeah. If I could attack so fast with the stake driver that I could usually stun him before he could continue his combo
Yeah.
with his greatsword. And yeah, I was much happier every time I got to the second phase, because like I know I can get through this phase. I was
Yeah.
having much, because with the first phase he comes right at you and he'll either jump or he'll dash through you or slam his arm down, or you get behind him, will do the little kick, or he'll jump in the air, and if you don't dodge it, if you don't have enough health, just instantly will kill you. The arcane blast
Run to
that
the
he does-
stairs.
Yeah, I would do that, but even then, it's like the arcane blast like would kill you. I had so much more.
Which is
of a
funny
struggle
because
with
like
this
once I
first
started
phase.
using the Tonitrus on him, it was not that he was easy, but when I finally beat him, I was like, oh, I'm going to get as aggressive as possible. And I just ran in there and I would just hit, dodge, wait a second for a little bit of endurance to come back, then
Yeah.
just repeat, hit, dodge. And then like I said, I got Henriette to the second stage, and I just tried to get as much damage on him as I could while she was still there. And then it was just the whole time, I'm just like, oh, I'm going to get you. This is the time. And I would just hit dodge, and I just stayed on the offensive. Like it did not let up
Yeah.
at all that final fight, and I beat him. And it was
And
like,
actually, I misspoke. I did get all the way through Nightmare Mensis.
Oh, right.
I got through I got the Blood Rock. Got through the wet nurse of what's it called? The old one's wet nurse. What's his name?
oh,
I'm usually good. I've been so good with the terminology in this game so far. Better than Dark Souls.
it's not Odin, right?
no. Man.
I don't remember, but the wet nurse.
But I got through the wet nurse, and because it sends you back to the hunter's dream.
Margot.
Murgo's. Yeah, Murgo's wet nurse.
Murgo's wet nurse.
So I did all that to max out my stake driver, and then I got a level 9 amygdala arm, and then I went back to Ludwig.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, sorry. So I misspoke earlier. That still, like, the sense of relief, like you just mentioned, getting through those bosses, because the bosses in the DLC, you have to be aggressive with the bosses outside the DLC, but in the DLC, you have to be
So the
much
DLC
more.
is one I put in, like it is so good. Like yes, you revisit an area, but it's changed so much.
Yeah.
And it is so good, and the bosses are so hard. The DLC is very difficult.
Yeah.
Especially with comparison of,
Doesn't
like you would
feel
think
like
the
should
end of
play it on your
Bloodborne.
first playthrough.
You would think the end of Bloodborne would be very, very hard because it's near the end, but it's really, okay, so Nightmare Mensis is annoying
Yeah.
because of the frenzy and the giant brain eye and stuff like that. But overall, it's really not that hard. Which one thing I wanted to ask, did they change it where you can't sneak up on the winter lanterns anymore? or was that just never a thing?
I don't think it was ever a thing.
I remember like being able to sneak up on them, whereas now my strategy with all of it is like have sedatives ready, run up, kill it as fast as possible, and then pop a sedative.
Right. I don't know if you could sneak up on them.
I could have sworn my first playthrough when I used Ludwig's Holy Blade that I would sneak up and I would like blade slam them.
I could have swore I remember sneaking up on them too, but I guess because they do have eyeballs in the back of their head, they see you because I tried several times. But that was one thing where I remember them doing actual attacks. They
do attacks.
But the ones I fought only ever tried to grab me. Literally, they only ever tried to grab me.
Maybe they don't do attacks. I don't remember.
Because, like, yeah, if they see you, like, it'll hit the little spikes in your head. You'll get frenzied. And stuff.
Yeah, I would just run up and start swiping on them. And
yeah. Man,
maybe they only do the grab. I don't remember now.
Those guys, they suck.
Yeah, Winter Lanterns are, and that's where Nightmare. It's not like they're super hard, but it's super annoying with the frenzy and stuff.
I'll say that final area reminded me a lot more of Dark Souls 1 because we keep using the word annoying, right? To me, the biggest difference between Dark Souls 1 and Bloodborne when it comes to difficulty is Dark Souls is way more annoying than anything, whereas Bloodborne is just harder because things are more aggressive. Until that point where it's just like you have to either be patient or it's just like there's no correct answer anymore. It's just like, especially because you're close to the end of the game, you're like, oh, just let me get through this.
So that's what I'm saying is like the aggressions. They just run up to the Winter Lantern, beat the crap out of it, and then use a sedative to get rid of the frenzy real quick. So it's like, to me, that's not really. I mean, it's a strategy, but it's not like super effective or anything.
It's not a fair fight because you can't like go up and fight them fairly.
And it is really annoying with the little dart blower guys and the boss with what's his face with the cage on his head.
Oh man. Host of the Nightmare.
Mikolash.
Mikolash.
Yeah, when you're fighting Mikolash, like he's an annoying boss.
Yeah.
And his second phase can be quite difficult if he does Call from Beyond on you because he can like one shot you. Even when you're super leveled up, he can one shot you unless you just, you could do the like you could whittle him down, running around and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, most of that area is just kind of annoying. But then when you get into the DLC, the old hunters, man, everything in there is hard, and the hunters are aggressive.
It takes the difficulty up so much.
Well, and what's the beast whip thing called?
I think it's just called the beast cutter.
Beast cutter, yeah, whatever that is. That thing is like you can do obvious parries and dodges and stuff, but it has such a wide arc to stuff that attacks that you don't think are going to end up hitting. And
which I realize now that weapon kind of prepares you for the final boss in a sense.
Yeah, with a giant shrimp yo-yo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so, yeah.
Did you have a problem with Maria?
Yes and no, actually. Yeah. That's the next thing I was going to mention. So yeah, got through Nightmare Mensis. Wet Nurse wasn't a problem because by that point I had spent so much time with Ludwig and leveling up and getting stronger that's like I killed her second attempt. I think the only reason why she killed me the first time is because during the phase where she summons the doppelganger, I forgot and it came up and just killed me instantly.
Yeah.
But went back, got through that, went back to the DLC, defeated Ludwig, sense of relief because of frustrating battle spending. I spent like 3.5 hours on that particular boss, not as much as Ornstein and Smo. Then I got to Maria. I think is actually a really good example of why I love this game, because the lantern is right before her entrance. It sucks that you can't summon an NPC, but like unless you just are getting to a healing loop where you keep spamming it over and over again, it's very fair. Like if you die, you just respawn, and you don't have to waste resources. You can go in, you can study her, you can learn to dodge through things, even in the second and third phase. You can parry her. It took me a little bit.
It took me a few tries for Maria,
not
but
it
wasn't.
Ludwig, but
not as long as Ludwig. Like I was getting frustrated with Ludwig.
Yeah.
With Maria, I wasn't getting near as frustrated. She was still difficult, but my biggest annoyance, because like the first phase, she's fairly easy. Well, I would say easy, but she has a fair parry window and stuff, and be able to do it. And even the second phase is not that bad getting through, but it's that third phase of like when the blood will swipe and then light on fire.
Yeah.
Because it'll catch you with that extra little attack afterward. And yeah, you can learn it and stuff, but I had a little bit of trouble with her third phase.
When I finally defeated her, all I did was I saved as much as I could in the first two phases when it comes to blood vials and healing.
Yeah.
And stamina. Like, I was patient. I would go in, get 3 or 4 hits before she would do the charge attack where you can't hit stun her. Like, you just have to dodge out of the way.
Yeah.
For the most part, I would stay to the side or behind her and just kind of like hit her until she dodged away, get closer to her, sometimes parry her. That final phase, like, I just went all in.
That's what I did.
Forego with any caution.
Yeah, throw caution to the
control,
wind.
Anything. Just like I would still try to time my dodges, but I would try to time it where I get behind so I couldn't get hit by the fire, and I would unleash as many combos as I could until my stamina was gone.
Well, yeah, that was the same thing with me with her. It was like once I just got ultra aggressive when I beat it. Because the first phase, it's like she didn't even hit me because I would parry her and visceral. And the second phase, she only got like a couple hits in, and I had her down to the third phase. I got to where like each fight, I would get her to the third phase within like a minute.
Yeah.
And then so it was basically just the third phase.
You could visceral her really easily. Like, that was like you could basically force her right into the third phase if you get 3 or 4
Yeah,
off.
like no problem. Yeah, and then but that third phase, and like I say, the biggest thing is just the blood goes even farther and it lights on fire.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was because for some reason, like when I fought her with the Chikage on that playthrough, I don't remember her like being in any trouble at all. And I don't know if it's just because of the specific build I had that I hit so much harder. Because I remember like the Chikage, if you have a max out Chikage and you have like the right not runes, but the blood gem fortifications for your weapons, like you do massive damage with that thing, especially if you have the blood on it, And I whipped her like with that one, but this one was like it took a little bit longer.
So it took me a while to defeat her, but I didn't get nearly as frustrated just because you respawn right there. You can just go right back into the fight. It was more fun that way because it's just I didn't feel like I was wasting time, getting back to a boss fight, resummoning an NPC, wasting resources. I could just learn and repeat. So it took me a little while. I did feel very relieved after defeating her, though, because it started to get to.
I was starting to get stressed, and it was a little sigh of relief after I beat her.
Yeah.
Which is something that I wanted to mention real quick, bringing up the blood gems, is I'm having a hard time deciding like which system I like better for upgrading, between Dark Souls and Bloodborne, and because I really like that there's no weight in Bloodborne because it's focused about being aggressive. So they're like, we don't want you to have to worry about the weight.
Yeah.
You're the same speed no matter what. Even with big boy weapons, you're still the same speed no matter what. So I really like that there's that, and I like the Carol runes and how you can add those different stats, and I like the gems that you could put on the different weapons, where if you can build it more towards straight like blunt tinge damage or strength or physical attack, or you can even make them elemental, putting on fire.
If they have the right slots.
If they have the right slots for it, putting on fire runes. So I like that a lot. But I also do like the ability in like Dark Souls where you can take a regular weapon and use the other. I mean, I know it's very similar, but using the different embers to make them into different kind of weapons and stuff. So it's like I'm having a hard time picking like exactly which is my favorite in that respect, because they both work very well for what they are.
I think I want to say that I like Dark Souls' way of doing it better, because unless you're willing to spend a lot of time in the Chalice dungeons in Bloodborne, and really go and farm for the right blood gems to slot, in Dark Souls it's just you just level up your weapon. You use the correct stats and it scales.
Well, but you'd have to factor in like the rings and stuff.
Yeah.
Because the Carol runes and things like that replace what rings would be in Dark Souls.
But the Carol runes will only, like, for damage wise, they'll only make like your visceral attack stronger. You can have high.
Well, and I'm not necessarily meaning attack it just in general, but I'm meaning like your overall play style.
Right. It gives more customization options because you can have one weapon change the blood gems and kind of like make it more to your style. Versus where in Dark Souls, if you create a lightning weapon, you have to reset it to bring
you can
it back
more
up.
On the fly kind of change stuff around.
But it's just like I said, just going back to, if you are willing to grind and find the right root dungeons to go get the right blood gems, you could become like massively overpowered.
Yeah.
But if you're just doing the main game like we did, which I was going to say we'll get to the Chalice
I was
dungeons.
going to talk about them probably last.
But if you just do the main game, the blood gems you get,
suck.
Yeah, like the ones you get from the Old Hunters DLC are great.
Yeah, there are some good ones in the main game, but it's really about doing the and to be fair, with that kind of thing, you don't really need them to get through the main game.
Yeah.
But getting those enhanced. So I think part of the idea too is that the whole Old Hunters, if you do a bunch of Chalice dungeons before Old Hunters, you'll be way more prepared with higher level blood gems.
Because you'll probably be soft capped for all your stats that you want for your weapons anyway. Because that's another thing that I was not the right level for the DLC. I don't think it's just
it's just one of those
trying to power through so hard.
Yeah, I mean it's just like I like both systems, but I just have a hard time deciding like which, because I can't really say one is better than the other or one works better than the other. It's just they're different, and then what you prefer.
And see, that's what I was going to mention. So thinking of the Old Hunters DLC, the big thing with this game is I had more fun, but probably got more frustrated in a weird way than I did with Dark Souls, even though I spent less time per boss, because I would get to the point where I would be stuck on like Ludwig, and then I'd finally beat him, and like, oh, I feel good, and then I'd kind of breeze through the next part. And then I get stuck on the next boss, and then I start to get frustrated again, and then I'd feel relieved. And then I'd get stuck on Maria, and I'd be like, oh, I got frustrated. And like it started getting frustrated to the point where it wasn't fun anymore.
Yeah.
And then I'd finally beat the boss, feel relieved, go to the next area. Even the fisherman's place, whatever the heck that excuse me, whatever that's called, that part, the fisherman's wharf, and leading up to Orphan of Cause. Like I didn't have a problem getting through that either. It was fun again. But then I got to Orphan of Cause.
Fishing Hamlet.
Then I got to Orphan of Cause, and it was at this point where I was like, because of how I decided to play the game was part of it. My stats, when I decided to do things versus when I entered into the DLC and tried to get through a certain point instead of going through the Chalice dungeons and becoming stronger. It was just at this point where I got to the Orphan of Cause, and I gave him a valiant effort. I really did. And because I was at the point where, I left the main game to do the DLC, and I was like, I started getting to the point where it's like, is this worth it?
Yeah.
I know we talked about it's like, we want to try to fight and defeat every boss, but I gave him a solid effort, and then I was like, okay, let me go and try to fight Vicar, and I gave him a few solid tries, and at a certain point, I gave up on him, tried to go back to Orphan of Cause, gave him a few solid tries, and that was another thing. The getting back to Orphan of Cause was easy, which I really appreciated. Again,
real short run. There's no enemies.
Yeah, most of the really super difficult, challenging bosses had very short run times to get back to them, so that was a lot better than opposed to going through Anor Londo back to Ornstein Smell every time. Like the pathways just were so much better. But then it's at a certain point, I was like, okay, I fought him a lot of times. I want to defeat every boss. But I was like, it's not that I was running out of time this time. It's just like, it wasn't worth it to me anymore. So I went away from him, and I went and fought Gurman.
Yeah, well, so I did the exact same thing.
Yeah?
Yeah, I was all the way, and I regret that I didn't go back and fight Lawrence this time, because I fought him. See, everybody says that. Everybody goes, I gotta quit hitting that, sorry. Everybody says that Lawrence sucks. I have never had any problem with him at all.
Really?
I don't know what it is.
Maybe it was my setup.
Every time I fought him, people talk about like, oh yeah, he's like hard in the beginning because he's kind of like a beefed up cleric beast. But then it's like I get through that just fine. I get to the second half and he's got the lava coming out of his butt, and it's just like I just walk around to his side and I just beat on him. And then like when he would attack, I would get around because you can't just stay right behind him because of the lava. But like I have never ever, and I don't know why, no matter what weapon, and I really wanted to fight him with these weapons now. I might go back and do it again after this just to see. But with Chikage or with the great source of like, I have never had any issue with him.
See, it may have been the weapon because I summoned the NPC as well, which that NPC is way better. Like he's like the smartest NPC in the entire game. He actually like heals himself and does a lot.
Which one is that?
It's the Confederate leader.
Okay,
I don't remember it.
The guy with the bucket on his head.
Yeah. So I got into the second phase, and then like I died because my weapon range was not. I was not able to hit him on his side without taking damage from the lava and staying in front of him because he just constantly sweeps his arms. He doesn't stop.
Yeah.
So I was just like, after I lost, once I got into the second phase, I was like, this isn't worth it. It wasn't worth it at this point. It's like I kept the rationalization I had was I can go do the chalice dungeons and I can get way stronger, but the amount of time it would take me to get way stronger versus just struggling through, it's like I could take a break and come back, but it's not worth it to me right now. So yeah, I gave it a valid try, went back to Orphan of Cause, gave it another valid try, and then I was like, nope, I'm just gonna. At the point, I was just like, I'm just gonna finish the game.
Yeah. Well, so which is funny because I was trying to fight Koss and having a hard time with it, and I think at that point the only Blood Rock I had gotten
was the one from Nightmare Mensis?
I had both at that time, I think.
One from Nightmare and one from the DLC.
Yeah, and so I had my Tonitrus and my Boomhammer at +10, and I was having a hard time. Like fought him over and over and over.
He's so hard.
Over and over. But which is funny. So the first time I fought him with Lewis, I don't know if I just got lucky, but I beat him in like 2 tries.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I was like,
so,
yeah, you were so mad at me because you were like, yeah, man, I don't even think you had beaten Koss at that point.
Like we said before earlier, I had never played through the DLC until I played with him. And I had these bosses were describing I had never fought by myself.
Yeah.
So Ludwig, Maria, Orphan of Cause, like the failed ones, like all these bosses I had always fought with somebody because some of them you can summon NPCs, some of them you can't, but I always had fought them. So soloing these bosses was so much more intimidating.
Well, even with Chicago, like it only took me a few tries to beat Koss. So every time, like when people talk about how hard he is, I'm like, I don't know what these people are talking about when it comes to him. But then when I went to fight him with the Boomhammer and the Tonitrus, dude, I fought him over and over and over. And then I eventually just gave up on the Boomhammer altogether because like it's just too slow.
Yeah.
So I just got to take little pot shots with the Tonitrus, which it did okay damage, But then I left and I went and killed Gurman because I was like, I need something else.
Yeah.
So I went and fought Gurman, which only took me a couple tries.
He's way more fun in a way.
So like he's hard. He is challenging, especially because he is a hunter and he's fast. But it's more of like a couple of his moves can be really bad versus like him as a whole.
So it's not really till his third phase when you can no longer hit stun him, where you have to dodge and then pot shot him in order to kill him.
Yeah. So I fought him and then I just used a hunter's mark and I was like, I'll come back to the Moon Presence. Mm-hmm. And so like at this point, I had killed everything or whatever, and I went back to fight Cause again. I got my butt kicked over and over. So then I went and I grinded like crazy.
Really?
And I got like 80 more levels.
I
got a stupid amount more levels.
Did you use the Chalice Dungeons for it or just?
I used Chalice Dungeons and a little bit of Nightmare Mensis with the pigs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
When I went and got some a little bit better blood gems and stuff and upgraded my weapons a little bit more and then came back to Cause and then I beat him. I took a break.
Yeah.
I was like, I will try again tomorrow because I had almost cleared everything.
Yeah.
So Friday morning I got up, I did my little morning stuff and I sat down. I was like, this is it. I'm going to beat this thing. And it took me like 2 tries that morning.
Nice.
And so I finally beat him using the Tonitrus and taking little shots. And the first phase became where it really wasn't that hard, but it was just like the other bosses in the DLC. Once I got super aggressive, I was like, I'm not letting up the whole time.
Yeah.
And the first phase was not too bad. And then the second phase, it gets crazy because there are some things that suck about Koss, particularly like the camera, because he jumps over and if you're locked on, your camera goes nuts sometimes, and it makes it very frustrating. So you can get like just screwed in just those couple of moments if it does that.
Yeah.
But I went in, I got super duper aggressive with it, and I beat him up and I killed him, and I was like, yes. And then I went back to Moon Presence and I wrecked that thing.
Oh yeah.
Like I got hit maybe one time.
After giving up on Koss, going and defeating Gurman, I actually had to I think for Maria, Koss, and Gurman, I had to go grind blood vials. That was the main thing I had to grind was blood vials, just because I kept running out.
Well, at that point, it would have just been faster to get blood echoes and buy a bunch.
Either way, it's just again, I wasn't willing to put in the time to do those particular things. I was like, I just want it to be done because this was Saturday night was when I was attempting Koss and then went into Gurman, and I was like, I don't want to play till 1 in the morning. I don't want to continue this on Sunday. I want to be done, have a day in between before we record. So yeah, I defeated Gurman finally after like it took a couple more attempts than I expected it to, but like I just chunked his health off because I was doing so much damage at that point.
Well, I mean, he's a tough boss.
Yeah.
He's
But then I went straight into Moon Presence. I didn't even Hunter Mark, and I didn't even I think I healed once because of the down to one life move.
Oh yeah.
And then as soon after he did that, I literally just didn't let up. I didn't stop pressing R1 until he was dead.
Dude, it's a nitrous, man. Like I don't know if it actually does more damage to him because he is kin, or what is he not even kin? Because
No,
he's a great
considered
one.
an old one.
Well, he's a great one, but okay, so kins aren't. I don't remember.
No, I think the bosses that are considered kin is like a Breedus,
Rom.
maybe some of the Chalice Dungeon ones.
Well, it's supposed to be like with the Cosmos.
Yeah, but they're the kin are considered the fake Cosmos.
Okay.
Like great ones, I think.
So I guess not. Well, he may not be any more weak to nitrous, but I wrecked that dude. Like I stomped Moon Presence into the ground.
He's so easy.
I was just like, I did the same thing. It was like R1. Yeah. Like I lightened up. It was just like,
especially at that point, if you've done the Old Hunters DLC and if you've grinded up,
my God.
you were already grinded up to,
dude,
to crazy amounts of power. Yeah.
I was so frustrated with Cause. I
Yeah.
was like, I'm max like all my stats.
Yeah, 'cause I didn't touch the Chalice Dungeons at all. I only got Cause to his second phase once, and that was like the second or third attempt. I got him to a second phase, and after that, I fought him for like another hour. I couldn't get him past. I couldn't get him past 3/4 of his health.
Really?
Yeah, even like trying to strategize with his dodges, his combos, and his like attacks. Like
so
are
for the
so hard
combos,
to read.
the combos aren't necessarily that bad. So they suck because if you get caught by one, you get caught by a bunch.
Yeah.
The biggest thing with him that I always found was the stupid the whip around him with his shrimp yo-yo, where he just does the two big circles.
Yeah.
Because it's like they're like undodgeable.
Yeah, it's the timing window is so hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gave up on him.
That and the lightning in the second phase. When he screams and the lightning comes down.
I don't even remember the lightning because I only got to it once and I died.
See, that one is you have to make a conscious effort. Like when he's screaming, you have to go like, oh yeah, he's doing the lightning.
Yeah.
And it hits on top of the mother, whatever he's orphaned from.
Yeah.
Or is it the orphan of Kos? Kos is
Orphan
the dead
of
one.
Kos.
Yeah, the dead one is the Kos.
Yeah.
So he lightnings on Kos, and it goes across the ground, and you can roll through it, but you have to unlock from him, look at that, pay attention, and roll right through it like at the perfect time.
Kind of like Gurman's scythe attack when he's in the air and he cuts through the air.
Yeah, with the through the flowers and stuff. Like you have to forget about everything else and focus on just dodging that. Yeah. But
so it seems like got through the game. Is interesting. And now you mentioned you did the chalices a little bit.
I did a little bit. Yeah. So I cleared the first chalice dungeon, and I got a little bit of some other stuff in there, but I didn't do a whole lot. But I've done them extensively in other places. And that's
for clarity's sake, him and I have both cleared like every boss you can do in the chalice dungeons.
All four different types of chalices all the way to the bottom through the Thumerian Queen and all that. We didn't do this playthrough just because of
too much time.
Yeah, that's like playing the game all over again by itself.
Yeah, if not longer.
Man,
those things.
Because there's so many bosses,
hard.
which sucks. Because I would like to talk about some of the specific bosses in there, like the Hound or whatever. He could be pretty hard. Which is funny because he's one of those where he's really scary, but like if you know the dodges with his bites. So I do want to talk about him a little bit
because there's so many more beast bosses in the chalice dungeons.
There's a bunch
because there's the cannibal who you can defeat. You can fight.
Yeah.
There's those guys.
So that's one. Yeah, he is so hard because he's in like the fourth. Yeah, the poison. Yeah, I just use the poison knives for the most part because like the fourth version, or it's, I don't remember. He's in one of the later dungeons.
Yeah,
and yeah, he is difficult. But like the big dog is because you fight him once in the first dungeon, he's not that bad, and you fight him again later, and he does do the fire thing, but he's way harder later in the other one. But he's another one of those where it's like he's kind of like Dark Eater Midir in Dark Souls 3. So if you just know, you stay right in his face, he knows a little pattern, and you dodge at the right time. When he bites, he'll bite, you jump in and smack him. He'll bite, you jump in and smack him. It takes a while, but he's really kind of dumb.
Yeah.
The hardest part is like when he does a big explosion or the dash at you.
Yeah. I panic dodge so much. I forgot that like you can't just continue to dodge around like in Dark Souls. You have to like dodge, wait a second, because the enemies, as aggressive they are, they will take a second before their next attack. You dodge through them.
Well, it's designed that way.
I had to remember that.
You got to think about it. But yeah, I mean, I've killed the Thumerian Queen. We've done all those, and that's another thing that I wanted to talk about that I really, really like about Bloodborne is it has so much more you can do if you choose to do it.
Yeah.
So, because you can fight the Bloodstarved Beast very early and start doing the dungeons very early.
Yeah, like as soon as you do that. You can, if you do all the Chalice dungeons at that point and then go back to the main game, the rest of the game is...
It would be pretty hard to clear all the Chalice dungeons without doing anything more than that.
Yeah.
Unless you're just like, super elite gamer skills. But the challenge dungeons are awesome. Some of them are very annoying. Some of them are very frustrating, especially the ones that like damage you the entire way through stuff like that. Or with the bell ladies and the spiders. So, like, the bell ladies in Yahar Grul are annoying enough with the dudes, but the ones with the spiders, like, those things suck. But,
I hate spiders.
Just that mode alone is awesome.
Oh, yeah.
And the amount of extra stuff you can do by getting the different versions of the weapons, because you can get the Lost and the Uncanny versions, which have different blood gems. You can build so many other different builds and stuff.
Yeah,
and
that part is really cool.
Yeah, and well, then you can do the randomly generated root dungeons, which is so much like that. That would be one where, like, you want to talk about some of the best for multiplayer. Like co-op going through the dungeons is super, super cool.
Yeah, well,
it's kind of like a playing a Diablo and Bloodborne kind of thing.
Because they're randomized. I like how, like, you at first when you're doing the dungeons, you think, oh, the environments are all the same, but then you end up getting to the ones that are like big open spaces. Like, yeah it's still all underground, but you get.
Well, when you go to fight the amygdala, like, you're like, oh no, there wouldn't be this giant open massive room with an amygdala in it. Yeah, or amygdala.
Yeah.
And you fight that dude. And,
No, it's...
Well, and what's really cool is they don't just reuse bosses. Like, so they have some original ones. Like some of the giant guys that are down there only in those dungeons.
Right.
And then you have, like, say, the dog and the different versions of some of the other bosses. But then you have, like, the ultimate goal, the Thumerian Queen, and getting the whatever she drops, the blood thing she drops, whatever,
I don't remember what it's like. Is it a blood gem or is it?
No, it's like
I don't remember.
It's like a fetus.
Yeah, it's so long.
But getting that thing from her and having you do get an achievement or a trophy on PS4, but it's also one of those like old school before there were achievements. Like having that in your inventory means that you went through all those dungeons. And you got to the end of it and got to her and fought her, and she's a totally unique battle on her own.
And hey, that might be something that you and I...
We could do an episode just on,
if we
co-oping the dungeons.
If we do that, I want to do it together.
It's a lot more fun to do it co-op. I mean, like, it's cool to do it by yourself, but, like, doing it with friends, running through those dungeons and stuff is super, super cool.
So that actually is a good segue into a thought, not just in Bloodborne, but as in the Souls games in general, is while they are designed where you can play them by yourself, offline or online mode, you can defeat every boss, you can defeat every enemy, you can get through every stage by yourself, and as much as the co-op system does kind of suck to deal with, those games are so much more fun and so much, like, I wouldn't say easier, but so much less frustrating when you play with someone else.
Well, which is funny, because I was just thinking it's equally frustrating and fun to play co-op.
Maybe
because it is a lot of fun to play co-op, but then like when you finally get summoned into someone's world, and then like when you're ding dong, well, you so often run in and get yourself killed, and then I have to re-summon you, and it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But
I think I thought about that a lot because having gone through the old Hunters DLC by myself this time, it's like I don't want to play those games by myself. I'm doing it now for this, but
they are so much fun to play together.
They really are.
So that's the biggest thing that I hope for Elden Ring. And I know, so like, okay, so when that person dies, you have to resummon, and there's supposed to be consequences to the death. Like, I get that. But a lot of it really is just wasting time.
Yeah.
More than anything.
Even just when you lose your blood echoes or your souls.
It's just losing time.
Yeah.
So even if the host dies and you both have to, start over. And sometimes, it's about we got right there and got so close. Like, okay, I can kind of get it, like, if the host dies, but I wish there would be a way to kind of more quickly get your partner back in if they die. Yeah. So, like in Remnant, like if you die, all I have to do is run and touch the thing, and it'll heal you and bring you back in. The enemies respawn. Co-op. Yeah, like the enemies respawn, yes. But so there are consequences. Like if you
Yes.
die and I have to respawn you, you have to fight the enemies again. But it's a lot quicker, a lot more fluid.
Yeah.
So I would love, please, an Elden Ring.
And again, the lore for FromSoft games makes sense as to why the multiplayer system is the way it is, but you can change the lore in Elden Ring to make it
Yeah,
where
it doesn't have to follow that.
Yeah. That would
I mean, Bloodborne
be
didn't have to
nice.
follow that. Bloodborne's different than Dark Souls. So that's
Yeah.
one. That's one a big hope for mine in Elden Ring, is to have co-op. Just to be a little bit less frustrating to get into. Maybe something more like Remnant does it, where you know like you start a game, I jump into your game, and then you can choose what areas we go to, and we go to those, and if you die, I can respawn you and stuff like that.
I'm interested to see what they're going to do with Bloodborne 2 because of how the three different endings you can get in Bloodborne. Like you have
What will be the canonical?
Yeah, because like you have the good ending, which is where was that the one where you wake up and everything?
Well, the good. So that's the thing is like,
Forgot.
what is good? So the first ending is where he kills you
Yeah.
and you wake up and you just go back into the world. But there's the argument
the
of
hunt still continues.
yeah, the hunt still continues, or because you did the Nightmare Mensis and you killed the wet nurse and arguably killed Murgo,
Yeah.
then does that change anything?
Right.
Because
What
the
is
hunter's dream still exists, because the moon presence is
Yeah.
the great
Manifestation,
one
right?
that makes the hunter's dream.
Yeah.
So like there's some argument there versus if you
Fight him.
Fight Gurman
without
without-
umbilical thirds.
then you get
You become the new Gurman.
you become the new Garmin.
Yeah.
Yep, the new keeper of the dream. Or if you eat the umbilical cords and you fight moon presence, you become a
The new
baby
great
one,
Yeah.
or what you would think is a
Yeah.
new baby great one. So do you create a new hunt
Yeah. New nightmare.
now that you are or can you allow humanity to move on from the nightmare, being that you're a new great one, and like do you retain your memory of the hunt being turned into the
My personal choice is I think I would go with option 3 because it takes more effort to get to moon presence.
Yeah.
You have to do those extras. Not to say that that's a point of contention because if you don't want to go through that process to get that ending, you may be confused going into Bloodborne 2. Like, why is this great one like here? Why is this nightmare different? But it would make sense because if it's a new great one, so to speak,
Yeah.
and you create a new nightmare, you could completely
the game
change.
could be totally
Yeah.
different.
It may
Yeah.
not even be based in
It could still be the
Victorian
hunt. Well, it could
England.
still be that all that stuff, but
Yeah.
because it's being created anew, the beast hood was created by man, or potentially from experiments with the blade. It gets very messy
Yeah.
between the pale blood
Another Vati.
and Vati. I love you, please Vati. Come on our show one day, or let us come on yours. I
Yeah.
want to talk with you, Vati. But you had the difference between what is it the pale blood versus the old blood,
Yeah.
because they say that the pale blood is like what comes in the moon presence.
It makes you the kin, I believe.
Yeah, and then you have the old blood, which came from the Chalice, the Thumerian, the whole race, the Thumerian race in the Chalice dungeons they found underneath Bergenworth. And then there's some people that speculate there's a third blood, and so it's because it depends on the language and the
Yeah.
Japanese translation versus the American. So it's like there's a lot of routes you could go.
Even based on how the NPCs interact with you, when like whether they become hostile or not, or it's like you're not the old blood, you're not the pale blood, you
Yeah.
are like, what are you? Are you
Well,
human?
and some of it's not created by the blood; it's created by the insight. Because
Yeah.
once you have more knowledge and you have the eyes on the inside to be able to, so it's like there's a lot of different directions you could go.
Right.
And that's an interesting conundrum between what is the true, like the moon presence would be the true final boss because it's truly the last boss. But what is the true canonical ending?
Right.
You know?
Because even going into Old Hunters DLC, that I probably should know this, but I don't remember. Like, is it a vision? Are you going into the past? Is it
So
the future?
that's-
I forgot what the lore behind that
That
is.
you have the eye of the blood drunk hunter.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like hunters that have lost their mind and know nothing but the hunt.
Mm-hmm.
So like they're not like you are able to still like you choose to hunt
Yeah.
where they have to hunt.
Right.
So they go into the hunter's nightmare where now they're forced just to never wake up and continue the hunt.
Right, and so
kind of thing.
defeating the orphan
does that get rid of that?
Yeah.
Does that, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. That's
And what's up
interesting
with
to
all
think
the
about.
other different Great One babies? And, because they say that Odin supposedly is the one that impregnates, what's her face? The Lady of the Night.
Mhm. I don't remember her name.
It starts with an A. It just flew out of my head.
Yeah.
But yeah, supposedly that was supposed to be another great one. Like, who
Yeah.
knows what they're.
You can tell we really love this game because we talked a lot more about the lore versus in Dark Souls we talked more about the game.
Well, the Dark Souls, the lore is great, and it is very vague and everything. But to me, Bloodborne is just the more intriguing
Yeah.
of the.
And we could go into more of a
Because
lore
you could get
discussion
into a lot of
another
debates
time.
about Dark Souls and whether you should restart the flame or not restart the flame, and what does restarting the flame actually mean, and should the true ending be letting the flame go out because that allows the age of man with the Dark Soul and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Like I say, it can get pretty out there too.
Yeah.
But
We'll get into that eventually in a specific lore video or something,
maybe
potentially.
But
Yeah.
But to wrap it up, I loved playing Bloodborne all over again, even with the frustrations and the annoyances and the time crunch and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. But if you haven't played Bloodborne, play Bloodborne.
Oh, it's I said overall it's more fun if you're willing to get yourself in that mindset of being more aggressive. But actually, failed to mention way earlier the reason why we played Bloodborne before we went to Dark Souls 2 or 3. If you
Well,
want to talk
okay,
about it
so
real quick.
I'll bring that up in the next one.
Okay.
We'll talk about that more.
Gotcha.
So, but yeah,
you'll have to
Bloodborne's
wait.
great. It looks great. It plays great.
Yeah.
It is hard. I would say, so my argument, so like when the last one we said Dark Souls is not as hard as you think it is, Bloodborne is exactly as hard as you think it is.
Even maybe a little bit more difficult
You know
than
what I mean?
imagine.
So it still has its moments, yes, of where like it's figuring out the puzzle, but I would say that the difficulty around Bloodborne is much more not deserved, but it much more in line.
Yeah.
When what Bloodborne really
Because
is.
you can figure out the puzzle, but if your reactions and you're not like going to take the steps to take those actions.
Dark Souls is chess. Bloodborne is speed chess.
Yeah.
Like you don't have time in between.
Yeah.
You know.
You just like you figure out the puzzle and you don't have time to think.
Yeah. You just got to do. So, but yeah, with that, thanks for listening.
Wraps up another From Software game.
Yeah, thanks for watching. Do all the likes and subscribes. You can't favorite anymore. That's an old thing. But yeah, do all that kind of stuff. And hop in the comments. We would love to have a little bit of interaction and talk with you guys a little
Community
bit.
discussion.
So thank you guys.
Yep.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.